We just did a handful of shows that were just to promote the beginning of the release, but hopefully we'll be promoting it for a while. You know, that essentially that's what my drive is now, is just trying to figure out in a kind of a little bit more complicated world how to get people to actually get a chance to hear it. You know, so it's just that's it. We're basically just focusing on that and trying to how to you know, whatever, share it with people and figure out the best way to do that. I would love to, you know. It's just the issue with us is this record isn't really properly released in Europe, you know, in the way that, at least in the kind of traditional way that I'm used to. I mean, it's basically a digital release over there. And so that makes me skeptical about having like the right, I don't know, whatever, like just people on the ground in Europe that are there to support you and there to, you know, make sure that you're, you know, whatever, playing the best places and doing the, you know, whatever, getting on the right radio stations or whatever it is, or speaking to the right blogs, or, you know, all those kinds of things. So that's kind of holding us back from doing anything. So essentially we're concentrating on the U.S. right now, and then we'll see. You know, I would really like to. That's one of the bigger disappointments of this album, is that I was really hoping to make, you know, that there would be like, I don't know, whatever, welcoming arms in Europe, going, you know, you know, we're here for you and all this, that kind of stuff. So we need to find that at some point, you know, if it's not on this album, then the next album. I guess so, you know, it's like, you know, I rarely play anymore, really, except for when it comes time to do the records. And then it's sort of a mad scramble to, like, get some very basic level of technique back, you know. It's like, that's a real, I'm always doing that, like, because I, for the most part, the thing that I focus on is, for lack of a better word, more like being like a director on an album, you know, where I'm bringing people together and trying to figure out the right, you know, the right tones and how they work together and how the voices work with the synthesizers and how they, you know, and figuring out who should play drums and who should sing and who should, it's always a different group of people that I work with on each record. And so that's like the thing I probably, I don't know if it's get the most joy out of, but it's the thing that I put the most energy into, you know. With Lost in Alphaville, it was really a case of doing one thing at a time, you know, like it was really just focusing completely on one-on-one relationships. So it was like, at first it was just myself, just trying to figure out, like, before we even started recording, before any tracks were done, like I just figured out a kind of you know, a layout of the whole record. So I had a big whiteboard which I have over here in the corner, and just kind of sat there and wrote out you know, the song titles in different orders until I figured out one in my head that seemed like, okay, that makes sense. It makes it, you know, there's a story here. When It's Time to Come Home starts the album, and The Future ends it, and this song comes second, and this song comes third, and on down the line. So I figured that all that kind of, I worked from that first before we even recorded, and figured out, essentially like a movie, figured out like how are you going to open, where are you going to, what's the next scene, you know, that kind of thing. And then started recording, and it was really cool because most bands, what they do, it's the first time I'd ever recorded that way, and most bands that I've been in or worked with or whatever usually just record a bunch of songs together in a room, and then once all the recording is done, then you kind of go, you know, go through everything and just see, oh, what song sounds like an opening song, what sounds like a closer. You sort of do it, what song sounds like the single, what's, you know, all those kind of things. and you kind of order it after the fact. In this case, we did the exact opposite of that, and it was more like, well, if It's Time to Come Home is the opening song, what should it sound like, you know? And if Traces of Our Tears is going to be the second song, what kind of energy should it have, or what kind of how should the drums sound? But it was a totally serving. It was more like serving the album instead of serving the song or something like that. So so it was cool. It was really cool, that part of it, and those relationships. So after that, I started working like one-on-one with Ryan Slager, the guitar player on the album. It was just the two of us in a room together for quite a long time, and then once we Ryan has some very unique qualities that I really just wanted to tap into, and I felt like had never been. The thing that I love about what he does is something that had never really been shown on an album to its best thing. So we went and tried to find that together, and then it's like, okay, we're done with this. Now where are we going? And then you kind of go to the next thing, and to the next relationship, and to the next person. And, at some point, then it was just Patrick Carney and I in a room together, and then at the very end of the record, it was just myself and Jess and Holly from Lucius in a room together, and that kind of thing. No, it was I'd done this big arts project with a ton of different people in 2009, and it was short films and photography and music and all this different stuff into this kind of self-indulgent sort of arts project that we did, that we self-released, and the songs were recorded originally within that project, except for they weren't done necessarily to be a Rentals album, even though we kind of used that name to bring attention to it. It was more, those versions were more to serve like an arts project, so they were much lighter and much, had a completely different tone to them, and so I'd already, but I realized at some point that the 10 songs that are on Alphaville kind of belonged together, needed to be together, and that's why that approach was done. Because I wouldn't necessarily call it a concept album, but they really do. They are songs that are kind of dependent on each other in some way, I think. Tour, or I keep calling it a tour. It's so weird to call things a tour when you only do 6 shows. Okay. Because my thoughts about touring is like the Weezer days where we toured for 2.5 years straight or something like that, and you play play the entire United States 8 times in a row, and then go to Europe. And these last shows that we did recently, I played bass probably on 4 songs. A couple of the older songs from the first Rentals album, and then a couple songs on the new record, and then that was it. That's all I played, and besides singing, Mm-hmm. For the most part, it's I really enjoyed playing bass on these shows because I with the rest of the concerts, I'm kind of moving around a lot. I've always sort of been that way, just a lot of a lot of excess energy that I need to get out. And so sometimes it's really hard to do that and kind of share your your enthusiasm for being where you are at and being with the audience and having all that crazy kinetic energy with them and that swirling around. It's really hard for me to do that sometimes and play bass. But at the same time, it's kind of cool because I did 2 songs at the front of the set and 2 songs sort of towards the back half of the set where I played bass, and it was cool because it helped me sort of regain my composure or something like that, calm down, center yourself, and that was cool. I liked that a lot, and so I played, I think, bass on this song Stardust, and then on 7 Years, and then I can't remember which song's off the first album. I think Love I'm Searching For, and These Days, maybe, I think were all those songs are like the easiest songs to play, and they're slightly mellower songs too. I have played the same bass since basically since like '92 or something. I was playing when Weezer started. I was sort of playing a bunch of different basses that I, like some basses that were not particularly cool or whatever, something just like some different things. I remember playing this like metal kind of hammer bass that I had from when I was like a little kid, and some other ones, and then I bought a Jerry Jones bass at some point, which was like kind of a Dan Electro copy, Longhorn kind of thing. And my friends that were in bands at the time, that there was like a little group of bass players from bands that Weezer was playing with at the local bands in LA, and those guys would all give me a little bit of hell for the Jerry Jones bass, because they would be like, well, that's not a man's bass, it's like kind of this teal-looking, very fragile kind of thing. And it sounded really cool, but it didn't take a lot of abuse, and so they would stand right in front of me when Weezer was playing, and they were like kind of like, we would only have like 10, 15, people that would come out, and they would just stand right in front of us and go, come on, and like kind of challenge your manhood or your something or your whatever, and there was always this kind of inside joke about like just like taming the instrument, and kind of aspiring to be that Mike Watt kind of style of just being really just taking that bass and taming it and all this kind of stuff, because we were all just a bunch of barbaric sort of caveman like bass players, and so those guys, those bass players from different bands, basically gave me different parts of of what became my main bass. One guy gave me the body, another guy gave me the neck, somebody else, gave me the pickups to it or whatever it was, and it was a real mutt of a bass. So, and so each one would sound like, this is a man's bass. Here's a '70s Fender jazz body, and this is what a man should play. So, it was that kind of thing, and it was like, here's a neck, you could never break this neck. This is like Telecaster style neck or whatever, and that kind of thing. And they all threw it together, and it has just taken so much punishment, and has been something I've used on pretty much. I used it on all the Weezer records. I used it on all the Rentals records. I did a little bit of bass playing on a Teen and Sarah record called The Con. I used it for that, and I played a little bit on Ronnie from The Killers. He has a band called Big Talk, and I played on a couple songs on their first record, and we used it as well. But so I pretty much only played that. I have that one, and I have sort of some copies of it as a backup. But on this tour, we were playing with the bass player that was playing with us when I wasn't playing was Sean from the band Starfucker, and he just bought one of those like Jaguar basses, one of those cream-colored, whatever. And it was so. I played that on a couple songs, and then. And ended up playing it on all the shows that we did on the East Coast. It was so cool to finally play something different, because I've been playing that one thing forever, So it's cool to finally not actually play my black bass.